Let's give Jamie and Kevin and all the sponsors a round of applause for setting all this up today. This is a great event, and I've been coming to this event since it started, and my story today is one of hope, because I've sat in those chairs, and 15, 16 years ago, I can remember thinking, how are we ever going to improve as a family business so I can be one of those people that's up telling their story? And it took a lot of work, but we're here today. I'm so proud to have my brother here with me as well. So Steve and I have fought the battles together. It was really, especially in the early days, it took two of us, right? If it was just one, I don't know if it would have worked, but it took two of us. Very proud to be here to tell you about our family business. Jamie said we're a third generation, but we are actually now a fourth generation family business. My son joined us about a year and a half ago. Steve's son joined us 2 months ago, and his son-in-law joined us just a few weeks ago. So we are into the fourth generation, and it continues. This is what I'm going to cover today. Those of you have seen Steve or me give a presentation, usually we talk about culture, continuous improvement, people first. This is new content, so you won't be that bored, but we're going to talk family business. We'll first tell you about the gun company, what we do, and then we'll talk about our transition over the last 30 years. We'll talk about some family business best practices, and then we'll make a plug for culture. So let's get rolling. First, introduction to the gun company. The gun company is a composites manufacturer. Really what we do doesn't matter. We're going to talk about a lot of different concepts, and we could be making anything, but it just so happens we make composites. And what's a composite? We have a substrate of some sort that could be glass cloth, random glass. It could be linen like your shirt. It goes through resin bath. It gets cured, gets put into a shape. Sometimes it's a sheet, sometimes it's a tube, sometimes it's a formed shroud of some sort. Then we machine it, cut it, whatever, to a customer specification. Most of you have never seen anything that we make. It's all industrial applications. It'd bore the heck out of you if we talked about elastomeric material, so we're not going to do that. We are a 70-year-old company, family business. We 30% ESOP owned, so our employees own 30% of the company. We have 850 employees worldwide and 12 facilities, 6 countries. And of course, as a manufacturer, we've got all the typical certifications you expect in terms of ISO, AS9000 certified, all that kind of stuff. But really what makes us unique is our culture. So let's talk culture. So this slide talks about culture before results. And I can tell you, I started in business in 1992, and I spent the first 20 years of my career focused on results, trying to get results, doing everything I could to get results. I was working on the wrong thing. The last 10 to 12 years, we've been working on culture, and it's made all the difference. So on the right side of the screen, you'll see our North Star. Last week, I attended an event where Andy Taylor talked about important things as a family business, and he said, every business has to find their North Star. Now, I had this slide prepared before he said that. And Mark, you've seen this before. You've seen our North Star. So Mark's my proof. So our North Star around the outer ring talks about 3 things. Take care of each other, take care of the customer, take care of the business. Most businesses focus on one thing. Make money, shareholder value, something along those lines. In our business, we got to do 3 things and get 3 things right all the time. It starts with taking care of each other. If we take care of each other, and that doesn't mean owners take care of each other. It means we all take care of each other. And if we can do that really well, and that looks like empathy, listening, care, love, if we can do that for one another, we can do that for our customers. And when we provide excellent care of our customers, they come back. It's a beautiful thing. And some customers will even pay a premium for our product and service. Another beautiful thing. And when that happens, it takes care of the business through better profitability, cash flow, what have you. And where most businesses screw this up, when they make money, they put it in their pocket, pay out bonuses, do something ill-advised. We keep the cycle going by putting it back into take care of each other initiatives. Could be better pay, better benefits, better facilities, what have you. So this becomes a virtuous cycle. And the more times we can repeat this cycle, the better. On the left side of the screen, you'll see the yin and yang of people first and continuous improvement. And so when we started down the path, we thought that these were two separate paths. We thought that those were two different initiatives. We're just working on them at the same time. Turns out, as we mature, these are one and the same. You can't be a people-first organization unless you have a robust continuous improvement program. You can't have a robust continuous improvement program unless you're people-first. So this provides us the foundation to pursue our North Star. So here's a little bit more about us. The markets we pursue: electrical is a majority of our business, but we also get into oil and gas, aerospace, defense, medical, anywhere a composite part is needed. We don't have any long-term contracts. We don't have a website where you can go order one of our parts. Everything is customer specified, right? We have to perform today for tomorrow's order. We have several of our facilities are very responsive and focused on the repair market, and 40% of what's going to ship out of those facilities on Friday, they don't know right now. So that is white-knuckle driving. Every day, you got to perform to get to tomorrow's order. Here's some of our key results. A couple things to notice from our key results, and we don't normally share these broadly, but we want to provide some teeth to our philosophy of how we run a business, and most people are results-oriented, so we show you the results first, so you stay with us through to the end. So the results all line back up to three things: take care of each other, take care of the customer, take care of the business. And you'll see our results are pretty good. In every case, we are either industry leading or world class. And I can tell you it wasn't always this way, right? We're not selling semiconductors. We are selling plastic parts, which was a big deal in the 1960s. Not such a big deal now. Anybody can do what we've done. Anybody can get to these results. You got to do the right things. But we're going to talk about that. So let's look at some of our results. Safety, TRIR. This is probably the result up here that I'm least satisfied with. And even though we're 40% better than industry average, through the first part of 2025, we've cut this in half, which is good. So we've got near misses closed. Those of you who are not in manufacturing probably don't know what that is. So a near miss is, except for the grace of God, nobody got hurt, right? So it could be something simple like an extension cord on the floor that is a trip hazard, or it could be something more obvious like somebody backed a forklift into something and caused some damage. So what we do is we identify all these near misses, put them on a red card, it goes on a board, it stays visible. Every red card gets reviewed every day until that red card gets resolved. And when it's resolved, that is a near miss close. So statistics show for every 10 near misses you close out, you save one injury. So in 2024, at 161 near misses closed, we saved 16 injuries. That's not enough. That's a world-class metric. That's not good enough. Okay? Some of the others, under take care of the customer, our sales CAGR is just under 20%, and that includes COVID. So that's pretty good. Under take care of the business, our operating margin is 2 times industry average. I've sat where you're sitting. I would have killed for that 15, 16 years ago. So proud that we are here. We have got a fantastic team. They are grinding every day. They're doing the right things. We are at world-class levels for operating margin because of it. So this gives you guys a bit of a reason to stay awake for at least a few more minutes. I know it's early. But here's another one. So we took some of our financial metrics and we put it into a stock screener. And you can use whatever one you want, E-Trade, TD Ameritrade, whatever you want. And for our metrics of sales growth, operating margin, and debt to EBITDA ratio, we are the top 3% of all publicly traded companies. Whatever your company metrics are, put them in a stock screener. See how you're doing relative to all publicly traded companies. Might take you 15 minutes, but it's a great metric to see how you're doing. So let's talk family business transformation. So I looked back over the last 30 years, and following family business literature, you know, there's always phases. It always starts with mom and pop phase, right? And there's some sort of growth spurt, and then there's some stabilizing period of some sort. And so I followed that, and I looked back and said, okay, how do you chunk that out? So from 1951 to roughly 1995, I call that our mom and pop phase, right? And mom and pop phase is incredibly important because without it, there's nothing. So wherever you are on this continuum, it's important, right? You got to go through all the phases. And there's, you know, there's a sequence to it. So after the mom and pop phase, and you know, the next 10 years is roughly, next 10 years, we went through a big growth spurt. And then the next 10 years after that was, you know, stabilizing. We call it professionalizing, standardization. And then the last 10 years, what we've called it is cultural breakthrough. This is when we realized that we were pushing on the wrong thing. And we started really being intentional about our culture and getting it right. Happy to tell you more about that. Phase one, mom and pop. So mom and pop phase, and this, you know, the gun company probably for a bit too long. When I was hired in 1992, I was family member number 8 and employee number 15. So lots of family businesses start that way where the number of family members outnumber non-family members. And we were no different. Steve started a year later, so now we're at 9 family members. We probably had 17 employees. So, man, that's a lot of family, right? And, you know, in those days, emotion outweighed the data. And you can see this picture here. This tells you everything you need to know about mom and pop phase. That's my grandfather and my father. I don't think we know what year that was. I'm going to guess the 60s. We don't know who the guy is sitting across from my dad. Nobody knows who that is. He could be here today. But you can see the desks are right in the middle of the warehouse. And this warehouse was in University City in the Cunningham Industrial Park. Nobody even knows where that is. We are now out in Overland. We've been out there since 1990. But, you know, family business got to start at the mom and pop phase. And with emotions explicit, you learn about family values. And one that was driven home to me was by my grandfather. And when we started growing in the 90s, he pulled me aside and he said, Richard, every person you hire is a commitment to that person and their family for the rest of their working lifetime. That's a lot of pressure when you're 25, 26. But I can tell you, I still feel that pressure today. And my father said, we might someday have a layoff, but it'll be over his dead body. So he feels kind of strongly about it too. That's the benefit of having lots of family, lots of passion. You know what the family values are. So 1995, Steve and I decided, you know, we really got to grow this thing. We got to get more non-family members into this business. So we both went on the sales side of the business. And we pushed and we pushed and we pushed. And our saying back at that time was, don't confuse selling and doing. Just sell it, we'll figure out how to do it later. Lots of risk-taking in this phase. Crazy risk-taking. I sold a job to a big potential customer. We didn't have the material. We didn't have the equipment to make the parts. We didn't know how to use the equipment. But we had a PO. We got lucky in a lot of cases. In that case, we made beautiful parts, and that customer became you know, a very valuable customer for a long time. Still is with us today. In that picture here, we've got Cedar Lake facility, Cedar Lake, Indiana, and that's our first acquisition. Raise your hand if you've ever done an acquisition. Keep your hands up. Now, if you're a banker, don't listen. Keep your hand up if you've done an acquisition where there were no financials. There aren't too many of us with our hands up, right? Now, our first acquisition, we go up there and it's a competitor, and this competitor has been beating us, and we figure they're losing money because of the way they price everything. So we needed to see their financials. And he said, I don't have any financials. What do you mean you have no financials? How are you running this business? He goes, I got plenty of money in the bank, and I track everything I think is important in this brown notebook. Family business, right? So we pieced together from his bank statements and his brown notebook, recast some financials. We're like, I think this thing's making money. And we ended up going through with the acquisition. And Steve, how long did it take us to pay that one off? Not even a year. Nobody else wanted to buy this guy because he had no financials. So we were able to negotiate a really good price. We got lucky. So phase 3, professionalize and standardize. So at this point, 2005, we've got 3 facilities. 2 of them were from acquisition. In 2006, we were going to do another acquisition. Then we were also adding a facility in Mexico and a joint venture in China. That happened like 07, 08. So lots of activity with different facilities. And even though every place that we had ran the same ERP system, what we realized is we had different processes for every process that should be standardized. To enter an order into our ERP system, we realized that for as many different people as we had entering orders, that's how many different processes we had. So we had to standardize. We had to figure out what's the single best way to enter an order, and standardize, train, and put that in documented training guides that people could follow. We had to do that for every process. How to ship a part, how to write a purchase order, how to do AR. Standardize, standardize, standardize. Same thing on the shop floor. Because we grew through acquisition, you got the equipment that was there. But we did a lot with machining, so let's take a CNC mill. Which is the best CNC mill? Because at one time we had 12 different brands. We now have 1. We standardized. So it helps with maintenance, it helps with training, it helps with us moving jobs from facility to facility. Instant capacity, send it to somebody who's got available mill time. So standardization, I'd say it's really not a 10-year thing because it goes on today. We still are trying to find best practices for every time we find a process that should be documented. And we document across the entire company. So our people in Mexico, Canada, China, India, wherever, are doing it the same way we do it in St. Louis and vice versa. Very important part. So we talk about getting the imagery right. And is Jacob here? There he is. Jacob, I got your 3-legged stool. We were talking about, this is an image his company used. So back in 2005, our cultural imagery was a 3-legged stool, and we still had, take care of each other, take care of the customer, take care of the business, but we put it in the image of a 3-legged stool because you can't over or underemphasize any one of the legs because you'll fall off your stool. And when you've got multiple cultures, this is a good image. But by the end of this period, we had our North Star. And in addition to our North Star, we had our why statement, right? To recognize and serve others so lives are transformed. So as we go through these cultural principles and pillars, do you guys really care that we make composites? It doesn't matter. These work for any business. I should say most any business. I shouldn't have a blanket statement like that. But it really doesn't matter what business we are in, because we are going to take care of each other. We're going to recognize and serve others and transform lives. That's a reason to get up in the morning. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, man, I hope I make a good widget. If they know they are part of a great team and they've got the opportunity to care for somebody, I'm going to get up and do my best today. It's really, really a powerful set of principles that everybody gets on board with. You can do anything. So when we talk about our cultural transformation, I want to say it was around 2015, we started collecting culture stories from our people, and they were pretty good. And so we started putting them on video, and I got a couple of them to share with you today. So Nick has been with us for about 8 years, Debbie 27-ish. Debbie in particular is a great story. She came to us through an acquisition and was a low-level clerk. And when we started implementing the ERP system, she took to it like a duck to water. And she's like, this is so much better than doing everything by hand. And she just dove in and she became an ERP expert to the point where she started going everywhere that we would do an acquisition. Debbie would be there to train and help implement. She got her college degree finally about 5 years ago. So we didn't ask her to go get a college. She didn't need it, but it was something she had to do for herself. So at age 59, she got a college degree. Yeah, she's amazing. So let's talk about family business best practices. Best practice number 1, over-communicate. And as humans, we have this great blind spot and a lack of information. What do? We assume the worst, right? It's a self-defense mechanism, forged by, eons of, is that a saber-toothed tiger? So we always do things to keep us safe, and assuming the worst always seems to keep us safe, so that's what we do. And as family members, the people who know you the best, they're also the quickest to assume the worst. Have you found that in your family? Yeah. So we over-communicate. We try to get in front of it. And what we do is a little bit unique in some cases. Others, this is part of the standard family business literature. But have a family constitution. Write down the family values, right? Have a shareholder agreement that lays out the expectations and responsibilities of owners, right? We have family council meetings, which is really important as we're bringing in G4. And then one of the things we've done recently is we've started having broader family meetings right around the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Anybody who wants to learn about the company, whether you work for us or not, you're a member of the family, come on in. We don't need rumors. You got questions, come on in. We do about a 2-hour presentation, serve refreshments, everybody has fun. But you got to over-communicate, because if you don't, what do people do? They assume the worst. Best practice number 2, clarify the roles for each family member. And again, this is pretty standard for family business stuff. Everybody's got 3 hats they're wearing: family member, employee, owner. And we got to make sure that when we're in a certain role, we keep that hat on, right? Takes a lot of coaching, takes a lot of patience, right? Grace and space. People are going to fail, help them. And as we're bringing in G4, we think about what's our ideal state new hire. We got to be explicit about this, right? We're looking for people who share family values as they mature. We're not going to hold family members accountable for the dumb things they did in high school, because I wouldn't be able to work at the gun company then. We want to make sure that they've worked somewhere for a couple years. We want to make sure they've had education that aligns with something in the business. We want to make sure their aspirations can be fulfilled by the business, right? But in times where you got family members who don't quite meet the ideal state, we have to make sure we've got development plans to fill in the gaps, right? Because we all have gaps. And one of the great tools that we use to help fill in gaps is CMA's assessment process. If you haven't used it, you got to try it. Their assessments give you objective data for people's strengths. So you don't want to put a square peg in a round hole. These assessments help us figure out what somebody's good at, and then helps us devise a development plan that fits their strengths, right? Really a great tool. I encourage everybody, use assessments. All of our family members, you put them through assessments so that we know and they know where their strengths are. Best practice number 3, help one another. And this is a CMA model for relating to one another. You may have seen it before. I think this was shared by Joe Hoffman. probably 25 years ago, but it still rings true today. So this tells us about our behavior, and lower level behaviors are destructive. There's only one level of behavior that's constructive, and that's at the partner level. The enforcer is the most destructive behavior, and that's somebody bangs the table and says, my way or the highway. Or it could be the screaming child who, stomps their feet and has a fit until they get what they want. Very destructive behavior, right? Next level up is scorekeeper. Family members in particular have long memories, and they're keeping track, right? It's destructive behavior. It's not as bad as enforcer, but it's still destructive. Now, peacemaker, you'd think, well, how is that destructive? Well, peacemakers tend to gloss over the problem, and they just want everyone to get along. So it's not as bad as scorekeeping or enforcer, but you're not solving the problem. You got to solve the problem. And producer, I spent a lot of time in that producer role because it was what I wanted. We're going to grow the business. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I would drive, and I didn't care about what my other family members wanted or didn't want. And it took Dan Bean some time, Dan Bean with CMA, to coach me and say, hey, there's another level. There's this partner level. You might want to consider it. And I think he used a 2x4 a couple times, but I finally got the message. If we're going to move forward, we have to do it as a family, as a team, right? And partner level is really the only appropriate level. And as you think about behaviors, it's easy to label behaviors good or bad. We got to get good or bad out of our vocabulary. Think about effective or ineffective. When you have a conversation with somebody who's just had some sort of behavior episode, the conversation should be about, so do you think your behavior there was effective? Did you get what you wanted? Because if it's effective, by all means, keep going. Chances are they'll say, yeah, probably not effective. But as soon as you say good or bad, it's a judgment, and nobody wants to be judged. So think about destructive, constructive, ineffective versus effective. And when somebody falls down, it's our responsibility as a family member to help them up. And how do we do that, right? Call time out. Listen. Give them the opportunity to have their say. Make sure they feel like they've been heard. You have to understand what their issue is if you're going to help them solve it. You don't have to agree with it, right? But you got to understand it. And think in terms of, helping them understand we versus me. It is about we. Think about ideal state. And forget the negative past. We all have negative past. Forget it. It's done. Go forward, focused on the positive future. Think about that positive future. All right. Number 4, get a board of advisors. Board of advisors is non-fiduciary. If you have board of directors, that is fiduciary responsibility. Most people in a family business, if you're going to have an advisor, they don't want that fiduciary responsibility. We've had board of advisor, I'm not sure, 2010, 2012 is when it started. Very helpful for us over the years. And I can remember 2015, we had a very important meeting. At the time, it was a very frustrating meeting. But Steve and I were sharing the results with the board, and the results were good, right? Results are over on the left-hand side of the screen. Our sales growth is averaging close to 13%. The ESOP's doing really well, outperforming the S&P. Got a lot of things to be proud of. Operating margin 7%. And we had worked our butts off. And the board said, yeah, this is good, but it's not good enough. And we're like, what do you mean? We're working so hard. And the board said, this is where you should be. You got to get to 20% CAGR. You got to get to 15% operating margin. If you're going to do acquisitions, get good at it. Be intentional about your culture. Your continuous improvement program's got to be both deep and wide. And it's, like that old Memorex commercial, our hair is just getting blown back. And Steve and I, of course, our initial reaction is defensive and we try to push back. And their response was great. They said, yeah, we know what you guys have been doing, but you guys can get there. You're a family business. You got a long-term perspective. You guys are both smart. You're hardworking. You can get there. We believe in you. And that was different. And Steve and I finally looked at each other and said, well, I guess we gotta. So without our board, I don't know that we make the leap to where we are today. If you don't have a board, figure out how you're going to get one. Extremely valuable. You got to get that outside perspective. Best practice number 5, start early on generational transition. So now that I'm older, I've experienced both the younger side of generational transition and now the quite older side, right? And I know when I was younger, I did not understand my responsibilities. My responsibilities for generational transition. I just didn't understand it. Nobody laid it out to me. But if you're a member of the younger generation that needs to go through a generational transition, you do have responsibilities. You got to perform at a high level. Absolutely. You got to have the family values and demonstrate those family values. You got to demonstrate passion. And then you got to be humble and grateful. Guess which 4 of those I had a problem with? That bottom one, right? Because I'm in producer mode, right? We're driving sales, we're driving performance metrics. They should be thanking us. No. That's not generous. That's not partner level thinking, right? So now we know. So now as a member of the older generation, we have to set expectations. We got to make sure the younger generation understands what the expectations are. And we also have the responsibility to create developmental plans for every member of the younger generation. We have to also create a transition plan so they can see how their career is going to evolve and their management and ownership of the business is going to evolve. And lastly, we got to share. And those of you who are members of the older generation, this is particularly hard. And why is it hard? They haven't earned it, right? But if you're other than the first generation, you haven't earned it either. Somebody at some point had to share with you. So it's incumbent upon you to share. Share your relationship, share your knowledge, share your ownership. Yeah, give them some stock. Not all stock. Give them something. So best practice number 6, get outside help. And we are so lucky in this community. We've got so many great service providers. We've got so many great companies to benchmark. Everybody on the left side of that screen, those are service providers in town that we've used over the years. I highly recommend them. If you're looking for service providers, we can provide recommendations for anybody in that box. They're outstanding. They helped us get here to where we are today. And on the right side, we've probably benchmarked more than 30 companies to help us on our journey, but 3 in particular. Wainwright Industries in the 90s, they won the Baldrige Award. At the time, they were the smallest company ever to win the Baldrige Award. They were fantastic for us in the 90s. Watlow Electric, they really helped us with our continuous improvement program. Peter Deloge, Steve Deloge helped us on family business stuff too. They could not have been more generous. At one point, we needed an HR person, and they said, well, we got an extra. You want them? Yeah, we'll take them. So just can't say enough good things about the Deloges and how great Watlow was. And Barry Waymiller, to this day, we are doing a lot of stuff with Barry Waymiller. We started a relationship with them back in 2012 after hearing Bob speak. And if you haven't had a chance to see Bob Chapman or his son Kyle Chapman speak, make a point of it. They've also got YouTube videos. It can be life-changing. They've got a book called Everybody Matters. Buy the book, read it, live it. We're so lucky to have Barry Waymiller in this community and doing the things that they're doing. So if you need help, get help. We got tons of resources. If you want to benchmark the gun company, by all means, call us up. We got a plant in Overland, our headquarters in Olivet. We'd be happy to do mutual benchmarking. We always learn something from benchmarking. All right, so let's talk a little bit about culture. So if you're in a family business that hasn't started the culture journey, a good place to start is identifying the family values that are important to you. What values do you want to see carried on to the next generation? What values do you want to see lived in your company when you're gone? Identify them. Pretty easy for the gun company. I already told you the story about my grandfather telling me, anytime you hire somebody, it's a commitment to that person and their family for the rest of their working lifetime. Very strong family value about job security, right? So make this explicit. Write it down. Make sure that you've got ways to transfer these important values on to the next generation. It's absolutely essential. How we treat others is everything. This is very important in terms of people first. Bob Chapman, if you've heard him speak, he talks about every person that's in our span of care is somebody's precious son or daughter. And they deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. Family businesses are uniquely positioned to get this right because we understand somebody's precious son or daughter, right? We can get this right. And as we've thought through people first, Maslow's hierarchy of needs keeps coming back. Maslow really had it right. And basically what Maslow said is to get to self-actualization, to be the best versions of ourselves, we have to get lower level needs met. So at the lowest level, you have physiological needs, food, water, shelter. We probably can't help you if that's what you need. There's just limits to what we can do. But if you need a safe place to work, both physically safe and emotionally safe, we can give you that. If you need love and belonging, we can give you that. If you want self-esteem, we can give you that. If you want to be the best version of yourself, we can help you get there. As servant leaders, this is our responsibility. The awesome responsibility of leadership is to help people become the best version of themselves. So any given day, somebody can show up at our workplace, and they can be anywhere on this pyramid. It's our job as servant leaders to lift them up. And when we screw it up, what's it look like? Enforcer, scorekeeper, peacemaker, producer. And we push them down the pyramid. And they become less productive, right? And we don't live our mission. And we're not the best versions of ourselves as leaders when we do that. And we're going to get this wrong, but we got to recover, right? And some of this is aspirational, and you got to try it before you can live it. But once you get the positive feedback, oh, it's a beautiful thing. You'll never go back. So what's next for us? The gun company's journey towards our North Star continues, right? There are opportunities to recognize and serve others everywhere. Opportunities to transform lives. And as you're sitting there in those seats, you got to think 2 questions. If not me, who? If not now, when? Think those 2 questions all the time. It's a wonderful journey, and we invite you all to join us. Thank you.
The text number is on your table. Feel free to let us know if you have any questions. So the first one that we have is for the 2 of you together. What was a challenge or disagreement that the 2 of you had, and how did you work through it as a business and a family? Probably many to choose from.
You want a whole list?
Right.
One thing you can imagine the kind of guy I got sitting next to me. So I'm the most blessed person in the room because I've got a business partner and a brother that is just an amazing blessing. But one of the things that we've done over the years is we have largely avoided disagreements because we will keep talking, that over-communicate thing, we will keep it talking until we reach a point of agreement. And so we just haven't had too many, between us, too many disagreements over the years that we couldn't work through by communicating effectively. And now with the broader family, it's been more challenging over the years to come to that same level of partnership that if you talk about the modes of communication that Rich mentioned, if you're in the scorekeeper mode, it's hard to be effective in your communications. But Rich and I have always had an incredibly easy path towards getting to partnership communications. Because a few folks at the CMA taught us a bit about how to do that.
It sounds weird, but Steve and I grew up in the basement of our house together. And then, you know, we live a mile and a half from each other. Our kids went to the same grade school, the same church, same social circles. Don't ask me why it works, but we got the same outlook, mentality. We look at business strategy. Sometimes it's scary. You know, there's times when I'll mumble something and Steve will be like, "Yeah, I know what you mean."
Talk about the early days when you had not developed this strategy, this culture. What was that like? Did all the predecessors to the two of you, did they buy in, or was that difficult?
No, they didn't buy in at all, to be honest with you. You know, one thing about our family is we believed in education. I give my dad a lot of credit for investing in our education. When we were very small, there was not a lot of financial resources. My dad was not making a lot of money. At one time, he was putting over 50% of his take-home compensation into our education, which is pretty staggering percentage of take-home pay. And so Rich and I received wonderful educations, and we thought about things the same way. And unfortunately, a lot of our other family members didn't think the same way we did. And so there was a very difficult period as we were trying to leave the mom and pop stage and move into a more professional business. One of the great things that came out of Nick Colarelli at CMA is he challenged our family. He said, "Do you all want to be the sandbox where everyone can come and play? And who knows how long the sandbox will last, but the family members will have a place to go. Or do you want to have a business model that's built off the golden goose, that lays golden eggs for the family for generations?" And thank the Lord, my grandma and grandpa said, "We want the golden goose." Because they very much wanted to take care of their 8 sons and daughters, but they also very much wanted to have a long-term generational perspective on the success of the business. And so thank the Lord that Nick came up with that analogy, sandbox or golden goose, and thank God the family picked the golden goose, because that allowed us to be a professional business with family members in it as opposed to a family business. And that allowed us to professionalize.
What, if you'd be willing to share, is the ownership structure now? You've 30% employee owned?
30% employee owned. We've got some executives that own another chunk as well. And then Rich and I are the primary stockholders today. And there's a couple of family trusts. And now, for those of you who have to think about estate planning, Rich and I have put our shares in a family trust as well, thinking generational succession years down the line. So as Rich said earlier, the idea of sharing was a difficult one in our family in many ways. It took a long time for Rich and I to be shareholders. I think we gave away 30% of the company to our employees through the ESOP before we owned very much at all. Yeah. I mean, we were low single digits ownership when we gave 30% away. So that was a little crazy.
Why'd you do it?
It was the right thing.
It was the right thing to do. Yeah, it was absolutely the right thing to do. I mean, and I don't want to get too philosophical here, but he had a wonderful Jesuit education, and I had a great Marianist education in high school, and we learned from our family that taking care of others is much more important and much more meaningful in the long term than just serving yourself. And so we've had this mentality that part of our role in life is to take care of other folks, and you know, that's a blessing that came from our parents and our family, and that's just part of our culture. And so ownership for us individually was never a big driver. My big life goal coming out of college was to be able to give my kids the same educational opportunity that I had. That was my big goal, send my kids to college and get them the same kind of education that I got. And that was pretty simple.
The ESOP has been a huge part of our culture. We're now at the point where people are retiring, and when they cash out of their ESOP, it's $250,000 or more. And these are people that really hadn't saved for retirement. And when you tell them and their spouse, you know, you got $300,000 in your ESOP account, there's tears. So, yeah, the ESOP, you know, it was a big risk at the time, but now we look back and say, of course, absolutely. Why wouldn't we have done that?
One of the things that's become apparent to me, listening to you, this is more than process in business practices. You just touched on it about your education in high school. How do you impart that to your employees and your family members? That I don't want to say it's a religious foundation, but it sure feels like it. And you all, which is very unusual in today's society, did your parents impart that to you growing up? And how are you doing imparting that to your children and to your employees? How is that working for you?
You know, it's working really well. It's interesting. I wouldn't say it's necessarily religious. It could be a little spiritual, but it's mostly philosophical.
From our parents, it was religious, a lot of Catholic guilt.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about that. The wooden spoon, the belt, those things worked.
Right.
We used to call conversations inside the company that if you had to talk to my dad, it was a trip to the confessional. Right. But to your point, one of the really neat things about role modeling leadership is sometimes it comes back to you in ways you don't expect. So when we went through, based on the benchmarking we did with Barry Waymiller, we went through a Discover Your Why process. Simon Sinek had worked very closely with Barry Waymiller, and they shared him with us. And we had our team work through a Find Your Why exercise, and they end up coming up with our why is to recognize and serve others so that lives are transformed. So you think about that a little bit. To recognize and serve others so that lives are transformed. It has nothing to do with making widgets. And he and I, had nothing to do with that wording. It came from our folks, across our company that had come up with that. And it was really, really powerful to see that philosophy reflected back from our team members. It was like that moment when you have a teenager who starts to recognize the parenting you've tried to put into them, and they repeat something back to you, and they're like, oh my God, they got it, right? It was awesome to have our team repeat back to us that the most important thing we can do is recognize and serve others. That was really wonderful reflection that what we were doing was working.
Are there concrete, tactical things you do every day or every week or every month to make sure that's playing out and the culture is playing out?
So we've got processes set up, and we didn't really touch on this, but Steve and I got out of the day-to-day December of 2023. We had successors that we had trained over a 5-year period. So there's not a whole lot that Steve and I do anymore on a daily basis to make sure things are running on time. The people who took over for us are doing a great job. Their numbers are better than any numbers we've ever had. So lesson is get out of the way. Let those people run, and they've done a great job. Now, within our business, of course, there's things we do every day. If you think about continuous improvement loops, there's, you got to do daily maintenance of your success system, daily continuous improvement activities, which you saw our board when Nick Baker had his little video up there, and behind him was our board of cards. So those get reviewed every day. Then we do Kaizen projects, which is another loop, and those can have a 90-day span. And then we do strategic level Kaizens when we do our annual business plan. So there's 3 primary loops, but the daily Kaizen has to happen.
So I don't want to leave our audience with the impression that you're running a food shelter, that you're not here to make money, because I think you've been extremely successful. Can you kind of communicate the context, the metrics around what you've done?
So I hit on them a couple slides back. Let's see.
I think to some extent what you're looking for, Kevin, is when Rich and I started, we're about 2.5 million in sales. And by the end of this year, we'll have grown by 100 times since we started. So we'll be around, at least around 250 by the end of the
Which is unbelievable.
end of the year.
It's not that long a period of time. And it's caused a lot of profit and cash flow and challenges along the way while you're still doing good things for your people. I mean, you don't see that very often. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been really gratifying. Of course, when we started the ESOP, if I knew how much we were giving away, I may have rethought it, but it is so neat when we have retirement parties and folks can retire knowing that the company is taking care of them in a really powerful way. I don't know how many of you are here are manufacturers, but when you're talking about the average American or really any factory worker anywhere, often these are folks that are living paycheck to paycheck, and they're not even always fully taking advantage of the match on their 401k. But the wonderful thing about an ESOP is it's money that they get in their account without any contribution on their part, without any match, and that money is held until they retire. So they really can't spend it. And it's kind of paternalistic in a sense, but it's a wonderful way to take care of folks for the long term.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
Rich, you mentioned one of the keys to success was the board of advisors. So how did you go about choosing them? How many in diverse fields did you want to have? And what advice would you give to a family business who is ready to form their very first board of advisors?
So our first board of advisors, and this was a result of Steve and I really pushing the family, and the response was, well, we're going to get a board of advisors, and my dad put his buddies on it. Which was fine, because my dad had a lot of good friends who had done a lot in their career. We had Tom Noonan, who was president of Commerce Bank, was one of them. Mike Miller, who was vice chairman of Solutia and had high-level positions in Monsanto. Really, and Joe Hoffman.
From CMA?
From CMA, and really accomplished people, and that was great because if we could sell the board, they would sell my dad. And so I think the board was put together by my dad so he could control us, and it was really the other way around. It was great to put a good business plan in front of them and say, man, this is fantastic. Paul, you should do this. And my dad said, okay, I guess we're going to do it. Whereas before, it was more of a battle, right? Today, we've got the board is people that we know through our different business dealings, and they're all top of their field. We are so lucky to have them and their advice. Every time we've got a gap, we can call somebody on our board and they can fill that gap.
The single most important thing we did to professionalize our business is to get a board of advisors. It was the single most important thing we did.
So 2 questions. How hard was that to be taking advice from non-family members, non-employees? That had to be really hard. Entrepreneurs are not really good at taking advice. A, and B, talk a little bit about your personal relationships with the family members. I mean, your parents really laid a strong foundation for you all individually. How did that evolve as the business went from 2.5 million to 250 million? That had to be interesting and hard for them.
It was. So the first question was around the board members. It was, they were such great people, frankly. It wasn't hard at all. And they had our best interests at heart. And there were some accountability messages without a doubt. I mean, we thought we were doing pretty good, but we had this one board member that said, you're not a good company unless you're making 15% operating income. Well, any one of you can pull out your phone and look on E-Trade or TD Ameritrade and find out how many publicly traded companies make 15% on the bottom line year in and year out. They're not going to find many. Maybe there's 100 out of the 7,000 publicly traded companies. So 15% year in and year out is tough. And every meeting he said the same thing. Get your SG&A down, get your sales up, get your operating margin to 15%. But it was great. It was great to have that encouragement and that help. Now, when you're trying to hit targets like that, it's difficult when you have family members that aren't performing at that level. And so I think no matter what family business I experience or get involved with, I see the same pattern. There are some family members that just aren't pulling their weight and aren't capable of performing in the role that they're in. And that is a huge challenge. And so we had to learn how to do that. And again, CMA was critically important by doing assessments, by getting objective data, by having good, solid role descriptions and verifying that the right people are in the right roles as family members. That was really important. And of course, we had to go through that time where we had to coach some family members out of the business because it was not a good fit. And when there's a lot of consternation, a lot of distraction, a lot of mental energy being spent on family business dysfunction, that is not healthy for the entire organization. So family dysfunction can totally impact and derail a successful business. And so we had to deal with those family members that were not a great fit in the business. And that's a tough thing to do, but you have to do it if you want to have that golden goose and avoid the sandbox. And we had to get out of the sandbox. And so those were really tough times.
Thank you. So we have more questions than time, obviously, but I'm sure Rich and Steve will stick around for just a little bit, as will our sponsors. I just want to thank you all again for taking some time out of your day. Hopefully you got some good information, and thank you to Rich and Steve.